Welcome to a new segment, a new series that we have here at Mayfield Counseling called From Survivors to Heroes. I'm your host today, Shayne, and with me today, our first guest is Dawn. She's a great friend where we've known each other for 30 years, which she reminded me of not too long ago. I don't feel that old. You definitely don't look that old at all. And what we're doing in this particular segment is talking about mental health, but from a lens of resiliency. What things we've gone through, perhaps trauma, perhaps bad experiences, and what were the situations that we experienced? How did we get through it? And what are some of the lessons that we can learn from each other from a lens of mental health, from levels of resiliency? And just have some good conversations around some good food, around some good tea, and just have fun with this. So with that being said, then I'll introduce Dawn and tell us about yourself.
I am diehard Brooklyn girl, currently living in Boulder County, Colorado. And I have been an educator for 23 years now. Born and raised in New York City, went to a school for performing arts. It greatly shaped my many things, but one, my capacity for friendship. Two, my worldview. My ability to see the world through music and art and drama. And just sort of shaped my reality. I always go back to, I taught history for 20 years, so I fell in love with history when I realized the power it had to grow my consciousness. Actually fell in love with history because of a boy. We know him.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, for this moment, I will go ahead and apologize in interrupting Dawn to let you know that we're going to go ahead and save names. We're going to change names to save and protect the guilty. Thank you so much for your time. And then I'll now bring you back to your regular schedule program already in progress.
Yeah, no, I think at a really formative stage of my life, you know, teenagers, adolescents are often driven by what their peers do.
Agreed.
And I was fortunate enough to meet a boy who was really smart and really cute, and he knew a lot of history, and I wanted to impress him.
Okay.
It's as simple as that, although the rest is rather complex and nuanced, but the beginnings are simple and I think beautiful in their innocence.
Yes.
Yeah.
Actually, well stated. I can dig that. So as far as that lens, as far as music and art, that's something in which we definitely have some commonalities. And you were a vocal major. Still are. I'm positive of it. I'm still an art major. In what ways did that shape your journey? What ways did that shape your lens, or just experiences where you had in life?
Well, you know, artists, I think, have sort of a sixth sense. The way they see the world is so powerful and unique. Your visual art was always just stunning to me. And the other thing is, when you look at children, let me back up a little. I had the great fortune of being born to a mother who gave me some perspective on what a child is. She would watch the news, and if somebody died under the age of 35, she would say, "Oh, she was just a baby." You know, I kind of grew up with that language, you know. So when I met you in high school, for example, so I'm 13 and I'm seeing other 14, 15, 16-year-old children with this massive talent and this incredible view of the world that I had not seen before. The way that someone interprets song lyrics. You know how people say, Michael Jackson was 5 years old, he sings a Smokey Robinson song. Smokey Robinson's like, I'm sorry, who is this kid?
Right.
This is not a child. This is an old soul trapped in a child's body.
Right.
Like, I felt like I was surrounded by those people. And now the term I use is raised. I was raised by those people. I guess that my parents put a roof over my head and food in my mouth and clothes on my back. But that's one aspect of being raised.
Right.
On the other hand, there was this large, diverse community of old souls who saw the world through creative lenses, who raised me.
Yeah. I can absolutely hear that. So one question I ask then is there a positive experience that you had as far as back in high school that you bring up that would highlight what you explained there concerning being raised?
There were so many. This is going to be tricky because we're recording this and somebody who was a part of the other positive experiences are going to say, oh, thought I was the favorite.
Yes.
So I'll give you a couple, and I'll come in through the side door.
Absolutely.
So this would be defined as a negative experience,
All right.
out of which a myriad of positive experiences emerged, right?
Okay. Absolutely. Go
All
for
right.
it.
So I'm a freshman in high school. I push a popular senior boy into a moving train. So you know about the hierarchy in high school, right?
Yes.
Freshman, newbie, freshman, you're no one. Seniors run the place.
Absolutely.
So I put the hierarchy in there on purpose, right? I know no one. I know one person, I am shy. I am not being self-deprecating when I say this, but I feel like I have a fraction of the talent of these, old souls coming in. And so I pushed this senior into the moving train.
Wow.
All right. And all to prove a point.
Okay.
When you're 13 and you grow up in the hood, there's certain things that rule the day.
Yes.
Like, boy touches your butt, you punch him in the face.
No doubt.
You chase him. If you can catch him.
If you get him.
You rough him up a little bit,
Absolutely.
right?
That's a
Because you
must.
have to make a statement to everyone in earshot and eyeshot that I did not ask for this.
And
right?
thus are the consequences.
And there are consequences, okay? The irony is no one was there to witness this.
Wow.
So, but I still have something to prove.
Okay.
Because I'm 13 and I have no idea who I am. and so luckily he didn't die. Right?
Awesome.
He blocked his head from going into the speeding train
All right.
with his hand.
Okay.
And so broke his hand or wrist. My heart beats 1,000,000 miles a minute. I don't know where the injury has happened. I just know that he is well enough to run from one end of the subway station, 42nd Street in Times Square, to the other end, to where there would have been a police presence where we could alert someone for help.
No easy feat.
No, at 3:00 in the afternoon in the crowd. Okay.
Yeah.
Swarms of children just released from school. Everybody goes running because that's another cultural thing,
Yes,
right?
it
They
is.
run. We have no idea why they're running, but we're
But
running.
we're running.
So we're running, and the caravan as it goes. And by the time I get there,
Right.
he is surrounded by 4 police officers and their German shepherds.
Yes.
And a crowd of young people who are desperately trying to figure out what happened. And because I was raised by good people, I'm going to just tell the truth, right? I'm going to just say, oops, it's a mistake, I did it. But what happened instead was his friends, males, came at me.
Oh.
Like they were going to attack.
Right.
And I like to tell people about my mom,
Okay.
who is born and raised in the Marcy Projects.
Oh, yes.
And we have this saying, you can take the girl out of the project, you can't take the projects out of the
girl.
girl.
Nope.
Okay. I was not raised in the projects. I was born there, but not raised there.
Right.
And all I could hear is this voice in my mother's head. She also was a bit of a social justice warrior before we were using that terminology. And she would just, right is right, wrong is wrong. Righteous is righteous. Speak up for what is right.
Absolutely.
Do what is right. Tell the truth. Walk in integrity. These were her constant messages to me.
Right.
But if somebody wrongs you, you know, take charge of the situation. Okay. And really assert yourself, but mostly using the voice. She never advocated violence or anything like that, but she had a strong voice, and she certainly raised me to have one too. And I'm quick too. So I was scared of all these people. I was scared that I had hurt this person. I would never, ever, ever want to hurt another human being physically. I had never done anything like that before. I was scared. I was ashamed of having been stupid enough to not think things all the way through. I thought my mother was going to kill me. So I'm scared of the law. I'm scared of my mom. I'm scared of the judgment and everything else. But in the moment where a 6'2", 195-pound man is coming at me, all I could think of is, oh, that ain't right.
Okay. So what did you do?
So I just kind of stood my ground. And I think people saw. This might have been the seedlings of that teacher stare that we often talked about. That people said, wait a minute, this is not going to be as easy as we thought. All right. And the heart all of a sudden stops beating, and it is replaced with this sort of, it's not going to end well for you. If you pursue this course of action. Now, I have no plan. You understand? I don't have ninja reflexes. I don't know. But there's a conviction. And so the other children stepped in. And they said, don't do that. Not because they were afraid of me, but just because, again, it wouldn't be worth it. Okay. Right? So cooler heads prevailed. People did some yelling and some name calling. And the heart started beating again because the conviction then wore off. Okay. And I was reminded again, like, you were the one that was in the wrong for this. So the tears start to pour, and I go ahead and go home, and I cry all the way home from Manhattan to Brooklyn. Wow. Cry all the way from the walk from the subway station to my home. Have to call. Remember that when you had to go home and pick up a telephone and call someone? I'm home. I called my mom, and I was crying so profusely that she couldn't understand what I was saying, which frightens her. Here she is at work, and she's like, you're going to stop crying. Otherwise, like, you're going to be in trouble because I need to understand what has happened to my child. All right. So I told her what happened. I said, I think he broke his hand, and she thought I was saying head. The poor woman. Oh, my goodness. And I'm like, I'm never going back to that school again. Like, I can't go back, And my mom said, okay, calm down, sweetheart. Like, I'll be home in a little while. And she says, these things happen. I'm like, is she nuts? These things do not happen.
I've not heard of these things before.
Like, you cannot rebound from this guy. She says, I'll be home in a minute. And she came home, and she said, oh, you are going to school in the morning. You do realize that.
There's no question about this.
It was never an option for my mother. Never. I had pneumonia, I think, as a first grader. She was like, well, can you still listen and read? It was just
my mom would say the same thing.
An option.
Yes.
So what did I learn from that? So I go to school, and first of all, my mom is like, I don't know where you're going to get the heart from. I don't know how you're going to stop your heart from beating a million miles a minute, but you're going to school. All right. Because I don't send you to school to be popular. I don't send you to school to be liked. I don't send you to school to be... Furthermore, they'll get over it. They're children. She had a perspective that I'm like, no, they won't. You want me dead, lady? I don't understand.
Do you understand what is going to happen to me as I believe it?
There was no convincing her. And I will tell people that my mother had me, she was almost 30. She was real clear about a lot of things. Okay. So I go back to school. Right. And sure enough, they're going to come for me. Okay. Mobs are going to come. Right. And they're going to be so bold as to knock on my math class door. And ask the teacher if I could come outside in the hallway and have a conversation. The teacher says, sure.
What? No,
yeah,
wait.
The teacher says, sure. I mean, I guess this is the consequences. You go to school with 2,500 folk.
I guess,
they
but
can't.
No.
Oh, yeah. As a teacher now, it mortifies me to think about
real.
what this meant. And I'll never forget, the classroom had a front door and a rear door.
Yes.
And I go outside, and certainly you can hear the yelling. I'm quiet. People are yelling. at me, and they're threatening me, and they're going through the motions, and then the back door to the classroom swings open, and a dear friend of both of ours comes out and says, "What is the problem?"
Uh-oh.
If you got a problem with her, you got a problem with me. I did not expect that. Another person comes down the hallway who I did not know, another senior, with lots of cred, and he says, "What is the problem? What are you actually accusing this girl of that you feel like it's worth whooping her ass for?"
Right.
Really think about that. And metaphorically speaking, for the next 30 days, all of the friends that I have today are the friends who stepped in and said, "What is the problem? If you have a problem with her, you have a problem with me." Out of that horrible incident came this notion of community that is, it guides my life. It makes up the core of who I am, such that I can't even have a Facebook page. People laugh at me and they give me all the "you're old lady." I said, but the Facebook, the notion it's counterintuitive. It may be a smart business move and it may be many other things, but for me, the notion of friend, you don't just get to click a button and be a friend.
No.
That's what that incident sort of planted in me.
That's amazing.
Like, these people have an amazing capacity to be loving and supportive. Some of whom have known me, but others not at all. Just to have access to reason and to interrupt the pattern of unreasonable behavior on my behalf.
Insert themselves that way.
It's powerful. It was a transformative experience for me.
My goodness. So I'm thankful to absolutely hear this. I have not heard this story before. What was the thing that rose up with you, that conviction that you made mention of? Where did that come from?
Carol. My mother's name is Carol.
Yes.
I can remember being a very small girl, small enough that I would have to do the double pace in order to keep up with my mom's single steps.
Yes.
And it was the era of, there were lots of young girls in the city having babies very young. And it would not be uncommon to see, for example, a young mother cursing at her children. And my mother would, give me your hand, squeeze the life out of my hands as she was wanting to smack some sense into the young mother. Right. And she would say things like, she ought to be ashamed of herself, cursing at that, like, children are a blessing, doesn't she know? Right? And that kid didn't ask to come here. We ought to do right by our children. My mother just had I firmly believe that constant messaging just was in here. Now, I was a super shy child. Okay. I was not a person who would speak up for herself, or who, if you said something offensive to me, I'd just go cry. Right. But my mother would say, I'd come home crying all the time, and she would be like, "Oh my Lord, please, child, stop crying. Tell me what's the matter." And it would be someone said something cruel, or someone did something mean, or, and she would say, "You're just like your mother, but the difference is you still talk when you cry. Like, you're not afraid of the ugly cry. Right. You're not afraid of the judgment." Just like, I didn't know that was a thing. I just knew that it hurt my feelings, and I was going to tell somebody about it.
Absolutely.
And I just think it was her constant messaging. My parents had that cuss you out under their breath kind of way about them. Absolutely. My dad was a careful driver, so if someone was driving, I don't know how he wound up being a careful driver. We're New Yorkers, but if someone was speeding or swerving in and out of traffic, he was just, that's just so stupid. Where's he going? Nowhere fast. And so they would be preaching in a sense. Right. And I'd just be quietly soaking it all in.
All right.
I think that's where it came from.
I can absolutely hear that, especially when you consider that from that fight or flight or freeze context in that particular moment, you had choices, and you stood your ground in the midst of that. And then you're attributing that to your parents and such. That's amazing. I absolutely vibe with that. I like that. So from that particular point in place, what would you depict that as? Because was that freeze or was that fight in that moment? Because definitely wasn't flight. You didn't go. You didn't run.
Which moment?
That moment as far as when they first tried to confront you with the police officers and such there.
Whoa. That was fight.
All right. Okay.
I didn't throw up my hands, but it was fight in the sense of like, no, I'm going to stand up for what is right and reasonable in this moment. And I have an ability, and I attribute some of this to my study of history, but I am acutely aware that sort of history informs the present.
It does.
And guides us in our future choices. I also am acutely aware that I can play an incident out pretty far ahead of where it is today in this moment.
All right.
For me, it's been a saving grace in a lot of instances, right? So I will weigh the pros and cons. You know, I could make this choice in this moment, and then, you know, we could all get carried out of here, you know, into a paddy wagon, or I could make a different choice. Ultimately guided by this underlying notion that I will probably be okay.
All right. Okay. Man.
Raised in the church by my auntie, my mom's twin, so I had two, a double dose of this kind of.
That's right.
All right. But, you know, one was like the heathen and one was the spiritual. They were the same people, kind of just turned inside out. But, you know, my sense of religiosity. I'm not even going to call it faith. I'm going to call it religiosity. I spent 2 days a week with people who were always striving to be good people.
Absolutely.
And again, shy person, didn't speak up much, but listened a lot and absorbed a lot in those first 13 years.
I can definitely hear that. So then walk me through then. So you had that moment where it was fight, that fight in you. Then you get home. What were some things that was going through your mind during those moments when you're on the phone with your mom, but also when she came home?
I never wanted to disappoint my mother. Tears are welling up in my eyes right now as I even think about it, and we're talking 30 years ago. I always saw my mom as somebody who worked hard, did the best she could with what she had to try to give me a better life than the one that she had. And I was afraid to disappoint her. And I just thought she trusted me to make good choices. She trusted me to get on a train at 6 o'clock in the morning and go up to 61st Street in Manhattan.
Miles and miles away.
You know, by myself when it's dark outside on the streets of New York City. She trusted me to make good choices. And so if I didn't make a good choice, I felt like that was a personal affront sort of to my mom. That was where the fear switched to at that moment. That I'm going to have to tell my mom that I made a bad choice. And the consequences of which I may not be able to come back from. Of course, she had a bird's eye view. Children tend to blow things up to be bigger than they feel big to us as children, but as adults, I had the benefit of that guidance. But that is all that I could think of. That is where the tears still come from.
I can hear that.
Yeah.
Wow. So, with the benefit of hindsight, looking back on how she came home, and she talked with you, and she interacted with you about it, what stands out?
No nonsense about education. I didn't go to college to become a teacher. Went to college to become a broadcast journalist. I thought I was going to be a segment producer for ABC. I had worked, I don't know if you remember this, but I worked for ABC for a few years before starting college, and I was convinced that I wanted a career in television.
All right.
And I roll my eyes. This is going to be another part of my trauma.
Go for it.
But switched my major to education after a really transformative lecture that I sat through, but didn't realize until maybe 10 years into my career that all those seeds, educator seeds, had already been planted in me by my mom long ago. My dad too. My dad was one of the first African American Pro Bowlers. He became a teacher after he got sick with cancer. He loved the game, and he was an excellent teacher. None of these things occurred to me at the moment,
nope.
you know what I mean, when I was shifting my major of interest and all of that stuff. But did I answer your question?
No, just
Tell me again.
in that moment, what stood out to you as your mom was interacting with you when she came home?
So, I love you, but you're going to school. I feel your pain, but you are going to school. I see your tears, and I'll wipe them here with you all night long. But tomorrow, you're going to go to school. It's like an echo, you know, and that is very much the educator I am today.
Right.
I have empathy.
That's huge.
I have a tremendous amount of empathy. I now have context after studying history for 30 years. But you're going to school.
Oh, absolutely.
Because, because there was something in the process of education that my mom felt deprived of. It was her trauma. Her trauma is what she was pouring into me. When in 1965, my mother was 18 years old and in high school and told, as many colored girls were, that a nurse's career is not it's not an appropriate or reasonable career aspiration for a colored girl. Right? She, shy also, never spoke up about it. Here I come 10 years later. She's like, that will never happen to my child. So for her, the path was education. She also had a mother who did the best she could with what she knew, had an 8th grade education, never came up to school to see about her.
Wow.
My mother
probably came to school.
1st to 12th grade. The only time she ever missed a parent-teacher conference was where she had to be elsewhere, and she sent my dad, who showed up in platform heels and bell-bottom suit pants.
Love you, Dad.
And I just love you, but Mom, yes, come to every parent-teacher conference. She felt like education would have been her way, and she did not have the ability to articulate. She did not want that for her daughter.
Right.
I was a baby in the womb. She's in college, ashamed that she has to take some remedial classes in order to catch up, wanting to be an actuarial scientist or an accountant. New day, right? So people are saying, Carol, go to the children's library, read the books that are on the 5th and 6th grade level that correspond exactly to what we're teaching here. It's really not more complicated than that. Don't feel ashamed. That's what I'm getting in the womb.
Wow, that's amazing. So there was 2 E's that you made that you put forth there. Education, huge, absolutely huge. In the midst of that, I'm thankful that she that not only did she carry that, but she carried that with you. You also made mention of the empathy.
Yeah.
How huge was that for you to receive that empathy from her?
In hindsight, it's everything.
How so?
It gives me my humanity.
I like that. Expound on that a little bit more.
Sure. I cried when I thought that I had harmed that boy. You can't do that if you don't feel empathy. It didn't matter. I felt justified because I felt like he was wrong, right? And I was, but it didn't warrant the consequence.
I hear that.
Right? So humanity, right? Let's take it to a much more serious event, right? There were 5 boys our age who were wrongfully convicted of a tragic rape in New York City at the time when we were in high school, right?
Central Park 5, yes.
And the one who got the worst sentence says today, now that a documentary and a Netflix series has been made about their story, says today that the person who had the most empathy for him, or the most impactful manifestation of empathy for him, was the murdering, raping, brutal, cold-hearted, real perpetrator of the crime.
Right.
It came 13 years later, but he exercised a degree of empathy, and in that way demonstrated his humanity.
Yes.
These things tie us all together. Like
yes.
you can't. I've often heard people say we will persecute and prosecute people who are in pain.
Yes.
But we don't see them when they are being harmed.
Right.
We only see them when they cause harm to others.
Right.
Right? And we don't know what we're looking at. So we say, well, this person, we'll put all our resources into the prosecution
right.
or the persecution, whether those resources can be social, emotional, they can be psychological, they can also be economic and legal and all the rest of it.
Right.
Well, I'm an educator now, so the ounce of prevention truly is worth a pound of cure. All the statistics point to that.
It does.
So that's what you have to, it's the thing that binds me. It gives me purpose for being here, having empathy for other human beings. When that girl walked out of the classroom and said, if you have a problem with her, you have a problem with me, she was exercising a degree of empathy.
Yes.
Touched my heart on so many different levels that it feeds who I am to this day. I don't think we can be connected as human beings without empathy.
Oh, I agree with you. Absolutely agree with you. There are certain pivotal moments that happened in the midst of it that things would have changed drastically if just one of these things was off. Talk to me about that. There's different places that this could have went completely different if any one of these certain things had not happened.
Yeah.
Talk to me about kind of that thought process. And
there, but by the grace of God, go I. That idea has been sort of sensationalized in the movie The Butterfly Effect.
Yes.
Right, that you make a different choice and the trajectory of your life looks different. I'm real clear that there's grace, which allows me to not judge others. Now, because I don't judge you doesn't mean that I let you abuse me.
Those are two different things.
Those are two different things.
Absolutely.
But the grace, they say, there's an old, I don't know if it's scripture or if it's just church jargon, but, God protects the fools and the babies. I've been both and all the time. and you're right. It is a humbling idea that had I been born to, even my mother's twin sister, just a different person, different personality, right?
Right.
A different decade. A different school.
Yeah, that's true.
A different set of circumstances. I mean, there are any number, only the one that has the bird's eye view over all of this can really show you the map. I can't show you the map. I'm just humbled by the feeling that there is one. And suppose I'd never had a community of support.
True.
I could have easily turned all the guilt and the doubt and the shame and the disappointment and the worry inward.
Right.
And I'm sure that causes you to implode. Whether you do it quickly or slowly, it will eat away at you slowly.
Or cause you to explode onto others.
Explode onto others.
Right.
So I now firmly believe in that sense of community. That a person, in fact, I was reading a study about drug addiction.
Yes.
And about the old experiment with the rats and the morphine.
Yes.
And, the rats are in the cage and they go in on the morphine and they become addicted within a matter of X number of days or weeks. And another scientist comes along several decades later and says, there's something amiss with the study. You changed the rats' circumstances. You put them in an abnormal environment, Rats do not live in cages in isolation.
They do not.
They live in communities with each other. So let's try it again. Let's put the morphine in the community with the rat.
Right.
But the rat has rat friends and a rat girlfriend and a rat uncle and play toys and, cushy nests and all the rest of the things.
Yes.
And some of the rats try the morphine and leave it alone, and then others don't try it at all. It seems like the variable is the sense of community.
Yes.
So for me, that's the thing. It's an authentic sense of community. That if any of those things have been, if you notice, that's the common thread, right?
Absolutely is.
I also had a brother who was willing to, step in case things needed.
Do other unsavory things if necessary.
Physical, how big brothers do. Had a big brother who said, "Oh wait, what now?" Well, while you're at home crying the tears, But again, a sense of community, a sense of belonging, a sense of connection, and really, it all ties to my sense of self-worth.
Talk to me about that. Keep going on that. That's important to note.
It can be a really lonely feeling, incarnating. I think I'm a pretty unique personality. And when people don't understand you, it's really easy to tell this story of, I'm here all alone. I'm here in this sea of 7, 8, or 9. I never can keep up with the count. Billion people on Earth.
That's
but
right.
Somehow, human beings can feel such a profound sense of loneliness.
They can.
Now, I still have those feelings, but I also have tools to deal with them.
Like what?
Well, if I'm being honest,
Always.
first, second, and third, I pick up and call my friends. I'm still not evolved enough to just go within and
Namaste.
and namyo not yet. I'll get there eventually. Like when y'all don't answer, then I'm like, oh,
I guess
I should go. Depend on myself, but. Really, truly, I'm reminded of that sense of community, right? If that doesn't work, like I've had some really hard times. I often tell people I shouldn't say this, but I hated my 20s. There were great things that came out of my 20s, my firstborn child being the greatest of them.
Absolutely.
My dynamic teaching experience in Brooklyn. But, I hated them because I forgot to use all those tools. So when raggedy things were happening to me, I was forgetting that I had access to help.
Right.
Don't know why. Glad that's over.
Praise him. Okay. Yes, indeed.
But so first thing, reach to your community.
Yes.
Second thing, breathe. I was also raised by a spiritual mother who was a midwife and who had been an author of books about self-healing. And I was, again, young and impressionable and lost my voice one day, which you can't do as a vocal major when you have a final coming up. Panicked and ran into a friend across the street across the street from where I lived, who said, come and see my mom.
All right.
And I'm like, yeah, I don't care who your mom is. Is she going to bring my voice back? I was that kind of.
I'm on it. Yes, let's do it.
Again, what does that stem from? The discipline that we were being raised with in a performing arts environment.
Right.
Get her done? Okay, so I see mom. Mom gives me the most awful tasting bitter tea in a bowl.
Oh my goodness.
And it's like, I've never had to use such hushed tones in my life in someone's presence, Again, a transformative experience where someone said, there's food from the earth that can heal you. Never heard of anything like that before. Right? So tools. So I knew when I went through a bout of depression in my 20s to reach for valerian herb, for example. Because I had that body of knowledge. So after I called and cried and whined and complained and boo-hooed and had people come over and sit vigil with me, then I could remember, had I not had that bowl of bitter tea, what substance might I had reached for in those moments of depression?
That quite possibly could have made it worse.
Absolutely. So,
gosh,
Grace, fools and babies.
Absolutely. I'll go ahead and count myself possibly as one of the fools or babes. I'm not really sure, but we're still.
It can be both.
This is true. But gosh, I mean, just that community, that grace. These are some absolutely wonderful things. That empathy.
When I had my firstborn son, I was sitting with my grandmother in her living room in Marcy Projects, and knowing that she had twin girls and 3 other children. And I'm breastfeeding the child, right? And I'm like, Grandma, how did you do this with 2 babies?
Right.
And she looked away from her game show and looked at me like I was the biggest idiot on the planet. She says, well, you got 2 boobs, don't you?
Yes.
You know, you put one here, you put one there, you know? And she kind of rolled her eyes like, your generation is so simple. You know?
Right.
I had already become a teacher by that point in my life. And I just laughed. I had been a student of history by that point in my life for, maybe 10 years. I just laughed. The way everything underneath it was, you complicate things. You got all this education, which is just stupid. And I just laughed. I so appreciate my grandmother. I so appreciate her with her 8th grade education, how we like to qualify people by the levels of education that they have attained. But there was wisdom in that. Her mother before her, wisdom in that. My white Jewish granddad with this chocolate girl, in 1900 and 1900 and no, you didn't.
True, absolutely.
Okay,
we just not finished celebrating Loving Day not too long ago.
That's right. That idea that I come from a long line of people who went just it's something in their spirit just said, it is what it is. Make lemonade or watermelon juice, or do what you're gonna do.
Right.
And don't talk to me much about how it's hard. Look at you. You have been chosen to be here. That's enough. I don't owe you nothing. Nobody owes you nothing. You how many bazillion sperm to count? I always tell my children this, and I always want my students to know this. I know as an adolescent, the brain says, this is it. This is everything. It's difficult to see outside of that. And I say to them, you know why I make you all say present when I call attendance instead of here? Now my old kids will tell you they know why, but because you're a gift.
Yes.
And I want you to find small ways to acknowledge that every day.
Yes.
That's whoever the slave persons were on one side of my family. Right? I think about them when I think about my drama. I can't, people want to say forget the past unless we're talking about Jefferson and Washington and them. But I say, do think about the people upon whose shoulders you stand.
Oh, for real.
Because they give you height. Never forget that. Don't make yourself small because your world is small.
No, that profits no one.
No, it just, and listen, and I'm not me, I'm not a larger than life personality. I have no interest in any of that kind of stuff. But in terms of that conviction,
yes,
there are people who paid the price for me to sit here
today,
and I honor them. I'm real clear about that. And so it's 10 years now. I read Post-Traumatic Slavery Syndrome by Joy DeGruy.
Yes.
And you kind of learn about her research and what multi-generational trauma looks like.
Right.
As a Black woman in an American context, I'm real clear. Now, Dr. DeGruy, gave some language to why we do what we do.
Right.
Right. But when my mother was saying, I'm sorry, baby. Oh, but you going to school tomorrow?
You going to school.
Where do you think she got that from? Right? When Dr. DeGruy talks about being in the bank and how we tend to hold our children really close, even though we're ostensibly in a safe situation. Where do you think we got that from? We don't, because there was danger in letting your children stray too far from you at one point in our circumstance. So I think it strengthens me. Sometimes my spiritual advisors say, don't look to the past because there's pain there, there's trauma there. You need to sort of let it go and get over it. And I would say, or I can use it as a solid foundation upon which I build a better, bigger, stronger house.
Absolutely.
I don't have to bury it and pretend that it never happened, but I do let it inform. Just learn from it. Yes. You don't have to dwell in it, right? But do learn from it. And so when I shed tears, when I see sort of like the railroading of children, Black boys in the criminal justice system, people go, oh, it's okay. I'm like, I'm okay. Understand. This fills the river, which flows and heals others.
Yes.
Don't look at that as a weakness.
No.
It's not a weakness.
It's quite the opposite.
It's quite the opposite. It's a source of strength.
Yes.
To know that I don't really care what you think of me and the ugly tears and mascara running and all the others. I'm not interested in that. What I'm interested in is being well.
Yes.
So if it takes being a little ugly for a little while, so be it.
So be it.
So be it. Choosing to be an educator can, in and of itself, be a form of trauma. It's not. I imagine that it's not a sensational enough form of trauma that anybody would make a movie about it or write a book about it or any of that. But I want you to imagine the thing that you love to do.
Right.
The thing that you feel like you've been called to do. Now, when you go and tell somebody that you're going to pursue that thing that you've been called to do, and they look at you like you're crazy.
Right.
Why would anybody do that? That is a low-paying, unskilled, not at all rewarding profession. Why would you do that?
What do you answer back with?
Oh, they don't want to hear my answers. I mean, I could write a book about my answers.
You should.
But what I'm saying is sometimes I heard you say once, Shayne, that sometimes we don't even know where the trauma comes from. We don't even acknowledge or recognize the incident or the event that caused the trauma. Right? I was sharing with my husband was sharing a story when he was 5 years old, someone punched him in the stomach, right? Well, I remember learning long ago, now he holds a little weight here around here. I remember reading long ago that like those things that happen to you when you're a child can very much show up, and they always show up in your body.
Oh, yes.
Right? I always tell people, you don't have any secrets anyway. I can see you.
Absolutely. Right
I'm looking at you, but all of those different things.
Yes.
Again, people will give me a look. You too smart for that. Why would you choose that profession? I mean, right? And I gotta go take that home. I gotta take that home, and I gotta sit with that, and I gotta, say, am I crazy, or am I stupid, or do I have something to prove here? Do I feel like I need to be a martyr? All those things are traumatizing.
Yeah. It definitely can be.
They can be traumatizing. I mean, some people will let it roll off of them.
But that's not everybody.
But not everybody. It certainly has been a point of contention for me. The thing that you love. Now, if the thing that I loved was medicine, people would applaud, right? If the thing that I loved was law, they would say, oh,
well, yes.
Yeah, you can, right? If the thing that I loved was even being an entertainer, or an athlete, people would applaud that.
Right.
The entire society would say, good on you. You're going to be somebody.
Right. We recognize you. We see you.
Absolutely. I'm a Black woman in an American context. How do you suppose it might feel to have another set of people render me invisible?
Ooh.
Oh, you ain't going to be nobody. Oh.
What do you do?
I know upon whose shoulders I stand. And there's no one who can tell me different. I combated it with learning. That's my superpower.
There you go.
Other people will have other tools. I know more about the people who would tend to judge or traumatize me
Right.
than they know about themselves. I feel like that's a superpower.
I definitely agree with you.
You know? Yeah, you go through your phase. Well, you didn't. But some of us go through phases of dating and things go wrong and people mistreat you.
Oh, I did.
That ever happened to you.
Okay, yes, you know that very well. That happened to me.
You know? But instead of internalizing really other people's bullshit, I just taught myself to be able to see it for what it is. I take responsibility for my encounters, however people show up, they show up to teach me something. They show up to reflect something in me.
Right.
So I take full responsibility for it, but I'm not getting ready to drown in your sorrows. I will study you. I will study your whys. I'll study your wins, and I'll come out stronger as a result.
Now that definitely brings me up as far as MC Light. What was her song? I crammed to understand.
Cram
you.
to understand you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I will do that. I will literally cram. I think people missed that she said that in her genius.
She absolutely said that.
It's gonna make me do a deeper dive, and I know when I come out on the other side of that, I'm gonna be a better human being.
So what would you tell your students then? What would be that one thing that you go ahead and tell your students that, you know what, I've lived through this. I'm still living.
Yeah.
This is what I want to go ahead and pass to you as far as from my experience. What?
First thing is, you are not alone. You have community.
Yes.
And people like me are here to show you what community should look like, because I had friends 30 years ago who taught me what friendship looks like. You're not alone. Despite all appearances, you are not going through what you're going through by yourself. That's the first, and the second, and the third thing that I will always tell them. You don't have to tell me everything. You don't have to tell me anything. But I know this. Wow, what if I don't have any good friends? Come, I'll get you some new ones.
Yes.
I will help you find them, because you'll never convince me that in our global community of 7, 8, or 9 billion people that you can't find your family. They're looking for you same as you're looking for them.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so that's the first thing that I would tell my children.
Right.
The second thing that I would tell my children is a lot less satisfactory for them, which is this too shall pass. You have to be able to see the temporary nature of the event. Now, I've learned some things about the effects of memory and imagination. That actually what we do when we are traumatized is we keep the trauma alive because we replay the event over and over again. So I read a sweet story once where the mom said, okay, baby, let's close our eyes and make a new memory, right? Let's just pretend that something else has happened or something else is happening. And I will teach my children the power of their own wonderful human imagination. It is creative in nature.
Yes.
It's not reflective in nature. Everybody thinks it's reflective.
No.
Not everybody.
But
you know, people tend to think it's just reflective. Well, what good is a memory gonna do?
a lot.
Show me your life and I'll tell you your memories. I'll tell you what you're remembering all the time. So I will teach them the creative power of their imagination. And the temporal nature of trauma. And the eternal nature of themselves.
Writing that one, trademarking eternal nature of themselves.
Some people don't believe that we're eternal. They believe that ashes to ashes, dust to dust. And I say, well, the things that'll eat me when I'm dust will live on.
That's true.
And do what they do. So if you want to take that scientific approach, I'm all for that.
Energy keeps on going no matter what. It's not destroyed.
Can't be created or destroyed.
Yep.
So this experience is literally, I don't even know if it would register as a blip on the radar. It feels big.
Yes.
But in the grand scheme of who you are, it is so tiny and it doesn't define you. And what you do with it will.
That's true.
But the incident or the event does not.
Man, if I could think of any other moment, if I had a mic, I'd just go ahead and just drop it in this particular instance. I do have a mic, but I think it would be very inappropriate for me to go ahead and drop this mic, and Trevor might kill me. So in this moment, I'll go ahead and get to a point of just kind of concluding this. Dawn, thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting me.
Appreciate you
So
coming
fun.
through and sharing with me even more stuff I had not heard before, and I'm learning even more. And even in this minute, just the complexities and intricacies and awesomeness of your life and what things you've learned, and I'm learning from that still to this day.
You're too kind.
I appreciate
Thank
you
you so
much
much for doing this.
Oh man, thank you.
Thank you for your amazing work.